Dalton has done everything from diesel mechanic to farm work, but eventually it's the septic business that caused him to change his career path.
I kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm tired of working for somebody else, and I've always thought about getting in the septic business.
See how Dalton is doing now after 1 year and what he's done to be on the path to septic success. Dalton, I was kind of creeping you on the internet, and I saw, first of all, are you the same Dalton with the TikTok channel? Did you used to be like a manure spreader guy?
Yeah, back when I was farming and feeding cattle, I did have a few Snapchat or TikToks of that. So
Well, don't be embarrassed by this. So
right.
I think that this is what gets you when you're farming and feeding cattle. I'm thinking that you're pretty okay with the manure side of things.
Yeah, that's the least of my problems, to be honest.
So is that kind of where you started life was like cattle farming?
So actually when I graduated high school, I went to school to be a mechanic. Actually, I went to Milford, graduated through that program for 18 months, got out, worked in the industry. I had always benched, when I was in high school and stuff, worked on buddies' vehicles and teachers' cars and stuff in the shop, but, got out of that industry when I graduated, worked in it for a couple months, and then I actually went to work for a fertilizer company. I ran a sprayer for them and did that for a season, and I actually went out. I was approached by a local guy around here, small family operation with a feed yard, and did some row crop farming as well. Went to work for them, worked for them for a short amount of time. We ended up buying a sprayer.
What year is this? Like when are we talking? How long ago?
Probably 2016, 2017.
So like 10 years ago, roughly.
Yep. So we bought a sprayer. We partnered with a local fertilizer company, did that for, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years. I got bought out of that. Kind of went on my own, feeding cattle at another location. Did that for about 18 months, and I kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, I'm tired of working for somebody else, and I've always thought about getting in the septic business, and
said no one ever.
Right, exactly. I don't think you just wake up someday and go, "Oh, I'm going to start a septic business."
You said I've always thought about getting in the septic business. You're 5 years old, running around Nebraska. Let's give people a little background. You're in I'll call it somewhat rural Nebraska. You're kind of like 60, 70, 80 miles from I think you're northeast of Grand Island. Did I see that? Yeah. And then northwest of help me out here.
Omaha,
you're kind of in a
Lincoln.
triangle, two big cities, aren't you?
Yeah, we're straight south of Norfolk, and then we're northwest Omaha and northeast of Grand Island.
Yeah, Omaha. Thanks.
Yeah.
So my experience with Nebraska is all on I-80 heading west to go elk hunting. So I fly through all those cities, and then and that's how I gauge like how tired I am, how close I am to getting to elk. I think York is on my way out there, and all of those. Yeah, I think you guys are like due north of York.
Yep.
So you're in kind of somewhat rural Nebraska, like the population you're in Columbus specifically, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. And your population's like roughly 25, 30,000 people in that area.
Pretty close. Yeah. That's pretty average. Yep.
So is cattle farming kind of the main thing going on out there? Is that?
Yeah, there's a lot of small family owned feed yards around here in Platte County, especially quite a few in Colfax County.
Well, the only reason I was asking is because you said you were feeding cattle. You had always thought about doing septic pumping.
Yep.
But you mentioned prior to that the first thing you were doing is always fixing everybody's cars, engines, things like that. That would lead me to believe that when you were a kid, you were kind of doing a little bit more of that wrenching work.
Yes. Yep.
Was that because you were passionate about it and that was really more what you liked, or were you really thinking about, I want to be a septic pumper?
No, I don't think the septic dream started quite that early. My grandpa owned a shop in a little small town, Silver Creek, and that's kind of where the dream of turning wrenches came from. I don't know if I just burned myself out too early. I did it, day in and day out young, and it's hard on your body, but what isn't, not like pumping septics isn't, but I don't know. I just wanted something different, and I guess septic pumping's where I landed. So
you decide, hey, I'm done feeding cattle and working for other people. What are the regulations in Nebraska to be able to start septic pumping? Like, what licensing did you need? How did you figure all that out? You know, or did you just like watch some YouTube videos, do a little Googling, and you're like, oh, I guess this doesn't seem that hard?
Yeah, I think, with the septic businesses and just the industry as a whole, I think there's a lot of information out there. And I just, started watching YouTube videos and joining some Facebook pages and seeing and just Googling, like Nebraska regulations. I did have a buddy of mine in the industry here, worked for our competitor here in town. So he was kind of my inside guy to give me some of that info as well. But yeah, we just, you have to have either a master pumper or a journeyman's pumper. So my dad and I both did that. That was just an online test. We did it virtual because it was kind of during COVID, but got that.
Like 2021-ish?
Yeah, probably 2020, 2021.
Okay. And so you and your dad did this together? Was that kind of the plan always from the start, or not really?
I think he wanted to be involved until we got going, and he's 60, going to be 60 soon. So he was kind of like, oh, maybe not quite as much. We have another business too. We do concrete landscape edging. So my parents actually run that business, and Dad was just going to kind of help me out if he could, with some overflow of the septic side of it. So
what year do you get your license and finally start going?
I actually just started this thing. I think we launched it officially last July. We bought our first truck in like the end of 23 or 24, and it wasn't exactly set up to be a pump truck, so we did some modifications to it. We put a big blower on it from Massport and Lincoln, kind of hooked us up with some of that stuff. But
in your mechanical expertise, I guess let's talk about that a little bit. To just jump into the septic business, number one, the first mistake, I would say that the number one mistake that I hear is, I knew I could do this, and I went out and I bought a used truck, and it was a pile of junk.
Right.
And most people don't have the experience or expertise to be able to fix anything like that. So in your case, did you go out and buy a used truck, and was it something you need? You said it wasn't quite right. I'm curious what that means. Was it the tank too small? Was the blower vacuum pump garbage?
So long story short, when I searched for a truck, they're hard to find. I didn't necessarily want to jump in and buy a new one just to see what the business was going to do. But we were supposed to fly out to LA actually to pick one up. We had a deposit put down on it. We laid over in Denver, got there, got a call from that guy. He sold it. So we're sitting at the Denver airport, and I started looking for septic trucks in Denver. So we rented a car, drove around, didn't find nothing, had like an 8 hours, because we didn't technically have a flight home till the next day. So jumped on a Facebook page, found one. It was in Mississippi. We flew back.
Shameless plug here. You know that there's a magazine called Pumper, and there's a whole section of used trucks, right?
And I, believe it or not, I actually listed this truck I bought in Pumper.
Oh, all right. Well, now I feel a little bit better about it.
Right. Absolutely. So anyway, we drive down to Mississippi. We talked to this guy who owns a septic business. He was a really cool guy. I mean, he's got a pretty good sized business down there. Did the deal, drove home. I had a local company haul it home for me. And like I said, it had a vein pump on it. I'd never even really heard of the brand. So like I said, I got in touch with Massport and Lincoln, and they hooked us up with a blower. And it took us just a couple months to get all that stuff right. We did a lot of plumbing changes and things like that. But the big truck's a 2015 T680 or 880 or something. It's got a 4,800 gallon steel tank on it.
So you can get probably three jobs in one tank.
Right.
The nice thing about where you are is probably, I assume, land application is relatively easy to find.
Yeah, I have not done land application yet. I need to get into it a little bit more, but our wastewater treatment facility is open 24/7 here in Columbus, so we can get in there whenever we want.
And they accept from pumpers?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did your the little bit of farm work and manure spreading type stuff you had been doing, that had to give you a little bit of experience even with the equipment, I would assume?
Yep. And then
it's same but not the same. I get it, but
right. Yeah. And then they kind of got me in touch with the DEQ. So I knew some regulations and stuff that, you need to watch out for, do this and paperwork and things like that. So
you got this first truck. Where did you get your startup money?
So when I got bought out of my sprayer, that's kind of where some of my funding came from. I had done decent in the last couple of years of feeding cattle, so that kind of helped fuel some of what I was doing too. I did not have to finance the first one, luckily. I'm a little financed now because we've kind of expanded a little bit, but
oh, you got to grow.
That was the opportunity. Like I said, when I got bought out of Sprayer, that was kind of the tipping point of 5 or 6 years of hard work of that business. Boom, I shifted over and did this, and it kind of set me up to where I can.
Well, it's interesting. You haven't even been in business a year, and you've already said you've grown to the point you have 2 trucks.
2 trucks. I've got a jetter van, and so I had a hydrovac, a ditch witch hydrovac, and they come on a trailer, but they pull like a lead sled. So I actually took all the stuff off and I mounted it to a 5500 Dodge cab and chassis with a flatbed on it. So
you're doing hydrovac work off of just like a little 5500 truck, and then you have 2 septic trucks and a jetter truck.
Yes. So
it's not just you anymore, obviously.
It is actually. I run it all, unfortunately. So I suppose the next step would be to hire somebody. But
well, you got 4 trucks. That means 3 of them are sitting there.
Right. Yeah, we kind of just switch off. Like, it's nice to have a big truck and a little truck, and then the hydrovac I use for grease traps and car wash bits because it dumps. It's got a hoist on it. So.
Well, you figured. I feel like in 10, let's call it 10 months, let's call it 12 months, whatever you want to call it. You've said a lot of interesting things to me that you've figured out in a short amount of time. You need a big truck, you need a little truck. You need a truck that has a full opening rear door and a dump capability if you're doing, grease traps or pits from car washes and all that stuff.
Yep.
Like, you don't know what you don't know until you kind of run across it. Is that how you've learned all this? Or like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think being in the business world, for the last 20 years of that curbing business with my parents, we've done a lot in that business too to set our trucks up better, and that's just at the end of the day, I kind of sit down and go, okay, what's some things we need to change to make this better, do this different. And I never planned on having a small truck until I started getting into some situations where I couldn't get my big one in, and we're having to like cut some limbs off of trees and stuff because I couldn't get that big one around. So I actually bought the used chassis and then I sent it up to Imperial up in Wisconsin, and they put a new tank on it.
You're like a year in, and are you profitable right off the bat? Are you like making enough money to be able to still take some home and cover all your bills? Like,
yeah, I was actually kind of surprised. Like I said, from that July till like November, things got a little slow in December, but that 3 months, yeah, we were fairly profitable, and I mean, the number kind of shocked me, I guess, but we've kind of set some goals for this year. I mean, things are kind of on track. It started out a little slow. Granted, it gets pretty cold in the winter, but yeah, I think we're on track to have a good year and stay profitable. So
when you start up from nowhere, essentially, like, what does your strategy look like to get business right off the bat? Is it word of mouth because you guys had the landscape business, because you were well connected with farmers and things like that? Is it just like, hey, I'm doing this, if you need me, call me?
Yeah, that's, I think between feeding cattle and doing this other business, being around people's houses, knowing kind of we do a lot of in-town stuff with the curbing business, but there is quite a bit of rural as well. And it was, when I first started, it was just calling people I knew, friends, and hey, I know you got a septic tank. Don't know when the last time it was pumped was, but I, appreciate get your business or give me a shot at it. The first couple I did, the first 2 weeks I ran that truck, I did them all for free, just because I had never done
because
it.
You had to train yourself too. Was that part of it? You're like, well, this is probably going to take me 3 hours. I know it should take 45 minutes.
Right. Yeah, that was a big part of it too. I mean, I never ran a pump truck before, and there's always, geez, if there's what ifs. Am I going to suck this tank in? Am I going to, suck this septic tank out, and is it going to pop out of the ground? Because some spots have high water tables around here, so you just never know. But just started out slow. Yeah, like I said, some of the first jobs took me 4 times as long as they should have, but that's how you learn. And yeah, now we're not. I don't think you ever learn everything you need to know in the industry, but you learn every day. And yeah, I mean, we're fairly comfortable now with what we're doing. So
are you still just doing that word of mouth type marketing, or do you spend anything on like Google or Facebook or billboards? Or
so we did finally get a website set up. I do have a marketing team up in Norfolk that kind of did all my logo designs and my flyers and things like that. We have our Facebook page. We promote pretty hard on there. I did do the Columbus and Norfolk home and builder show. That was pretty good exposure. Biggest thing's been Facebook. I started our Facebook page for our curbing business a lot of years ago, and that was fairly successful, and it's fairly cheap. You can pay to promote on there, but it's kind of pennies in the broad spectrum of things. But yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. So.
And do you feel like as the business grows, like what is your strategy? Like, are your strategies day by day just because you're kind of so new at this? Like, again, you haven't hired anybody yet, but you kind of feel like you should. You're growing to a point where now you have 3, 4, 5 trucks. When you wake up every day, like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, obviously, day-to-day operations are getting the pumps and things like that need to get done. And then,
even like organizing, like how are you fielding phone calls? Are they forwarding through to your cell phone and you're trying your best to do the customer service side too?
Yeah. So I don't have an answering service. I've looked into it. I just like to, nothing bad against that system, but I just like to be the guy that answers the phone and talks to him initially. So yeah, I field all the calls, everything. I actually have 2 numbers that come to one phone. So I have our curbing number and then I have my pumping number. So it all comes to one phone, and I just field them back and forth. And yeah, I guess it's not a perfect system, but it's working right now. So.
Well, I mean, and I'll get behind you on this because I can always tell as a consumer, no matter what I always know when I'm talking to an answering service.
Yep.
And not that it's a turnoff necessarily, but you almost kind of feel like you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like you're jumping through a middleman to get something done.
Yep.
So what's your goals? Let's say, like, what are your goals for this year? You said you had set some new goals, and I'm sure they're probably monetary and everything else, but do they also include like, well, I got to find another person and things like that?
Yep. I would definitely like to have somebody hired, this year, at the end of the year for sure. Sooner would be great. I do have another guy that's kind of interested in getting into the industry. So I've been talking with him quite a bit. He kind of wants to get started. Not that we'd run under 5-star. I think he would start his own, but yeah, I mean, really just get somebody hired for the year and try to get somebody in a truck and ride with me. There's a guy who wants to ride and come check it out and is kind of interested in it. So that's, to me, I've always been a hands-on guy. So best thing to do is just come jump in the truck and ride and see what you think. So
looking back at this first year in business, like what do you think was your biggest, like, what did you learn that you're like, it was the biggest thing? Like, wow, this was important to learn.
Oh boy.
I wish I had known this before I started. Nothing?
Nothing. I mean, I guess the depth, this is kind of just off the wall random, but the depth of some of these tanks, obviously I'm kind of a crossbuster believer, so we do crossbuster everything when we get in there. But I mean, it's the unknowns of when you show up at a place and they don't know where the tank is. I've had to buy some location equipment that I had no idea how to use. So that's been a little bit of a learning curve, running a camera, trying to find the inlet, dig it up. And nothing says when you find the inlet, that doesn't mean there's always going to be a lid there. It seems like there's always a pump outlet somewhere else, or you're digging here, digging there. So that was probably the biggest learning curve. Wish I knew, hey, you would think in 2025, everybody would know where their septic tank is. Not the case.
I would bet more don't than do.
For sure. And it's really, lately it's been that we've had to, I don't have an excavator, but I do have a couple crews I work with that come in and dig for me. And yeah, they've been on the phone a lot, it seems like, just because I don't know if, whether we're advertising so people will make it aware, they just didn't know. And it seems like, hey, we need our pumped. I was like, okay, when's the last time you had a pumped? Well, never. Okay, so we have to locate the tank or whatever.
Does Nebraska not have like in Wisconsin, actually it's county by county in Wisconsin. They actually have septic service. You have to have your tank serviced every 3 years where we live.
See, I think there's a law like that in Nebraska. I know, like with installs now, I think the risers have to be, either exposed or X amount. I mean, super, super close. But I don't, I don't think there is an actual pump out regulation. Like you have to have it serviced. Now, maybe that could be like, there's some bigger communities around here, like some country clubs, they might have that.
More like an HOA thing,
right?
Something like that.
Right. The separate subdivision stuff, they might have that requirement, but As a whole, I don't think so. So,
well, as a pumper, you should figure out who your local association is and push for something like that, because that's good for pumpers. It's good for everyone. I mean, there's a reason it's in place.
Yeah.
Everybody, until you learn about your septic system a little bit, it's kind of a just forget about it. People don't realize that it needs maintenance,
until you have a problem, and then it's a big deal. Yeah.
So you're new at this. 5 years from now, like if you could put yourself in that same seat you're sitting in now, what do you want 5-star to be?
I want it to be the name in Columbus for sure. I mean, there is another guy in town. He's been in the industry a long time. So before I started 5-star, I was making strides to buy him out because, or get in with him and see if I could take over, just because I knew he was looking for a guy to kind of do that. Long story short, didn't work out that way. So we, started our own, but ideally, I mean, when he decides to either sell the business or whatever he's going to do with it, I'd like to acquire his books and, carry on with that to keep it going. And I'd like 5-star to be the name in Columbus.
Visit 5starpumping.com to learn more about Dalton's business in Columbus, Nebraska. Please like and subscribe to keep more great content coming.